These days, there are a ton of free to low cost learning resources out there. I mean, from YouTube tutorials to Udemy courses, Coursera, other learning platforms, you can learn anything you want for basically free. This abundance of information is a double-edged sword in my opinion though, because it can get really overwhelming really quickly. With that in mind, I mean, how do we make progress if we're feeling overwhelmed? Or how do we actually achieve our professional goals? And how do we focus on skills that are really valuable? Hey folks, I'm Trent. I'm a professional data engineer and have been for the past 5 years, and I was inspired by two things to make this video. One of them was the fact that I got a comment and have been asked multiple times in person the question, how do I become a data engineer, or how do I become a data professional? And secondly, I saw a bunch of learning roadmap videos on YouTube for whatever topic. There are a whole bunch of learning roadmaps out there, and I thought about it, and when I started my career, I actually watched a few of those and then thought about it some more and realized that I had followed approximately 0 of them. So I think they're really useful and really helpful. They exposed me to a lot, but I followed none of them. So in this video, I want to do two things. I want to share my personal journey to becoming a data professional, specifically a data engineer, and then share 3 bits of advice that I think could help anybody who is looking to learn a new skill or level up their current skills. So back in 2018, I graduated from university with an honors degree in physics and applied mathematics. I love math, hence the channel name. And I'd heard about the career opportunity of becoming a data scientist. I thought to myself, well, if people would pay me to do math for them, basically, that would be awesome. That's the ideal career. And the salaries were pretty good. So I attended a job seminar to learn a little bit about the market out there, like what different companies had to offer. And I came across a consulting firm that was looking for data scientists in particular. And I went ahead, asked for an interview, managed to get the interview, and created a portfolio project that I presented to them. Now, I didn't have any business skills. I didn't take any business classes at university. This was the first time I was actually applying to work a corporate job. So I really focused in on the technical aspect of data science, and they seemed impressed by it, and I managed to land the job. So in the beginning of 2019, after a couple weeks of company training, I managed to get my first contract with them to a client who happened to be in the banking sector. I was incredibly nervous for this opportunity. And I remember when I met the clients for the first time, I actually dropped my company-issued laptop on the floor, so, good first impressions. But I finally was doing the data science thing, right? I was finally actually going to be a professional data scientist. I met the team that I was going to be working with. They were mostly comprised of data engineers. I had no idea what data engineering was or what that entailed, but I got on really well with the team, and they shared a lot of my personal interests, and I am actually friends with a lot of those people to this day and stay in contact with them. So I really enjoyed that experience. The problem was that I wasn't able to do a lot of data science for my clients, and there were several problems. Firstly, the technology stack that the client was using comprised of Hadoop, and I had no idea what Hadoop was. I'd never heard of Apache Spark, Apache Hive. The whole Hadoop ecosystem was a mystery to me, so that was the first technical hurdle. Secondly, the data that I was dealing with was a mess. So I couldn't really do data science because the data was so esoteric and so difficult to understand. I wasn't really doing anything of value. And lastly, the client themselves didn't really have specific analytical questions for me. No one came up to me and asked me questions that I could answer with the data. So I was really struggling. So with that combination of factors and challenges, I really wasn't adding value to the client, and my contract came into question. I was going to be moved from that project to a different project because really I wasn't doing anything of significant value. But as I said, I really enjoyed working with that team, and I was learning a lot. I enjoyed the technical aspects of what I was doing, albeit really challenging to me. So I did something that seems obvious in retrospect, but really changed my career trajectory. And that was to ask every single member of the client team that I knew, every stakeholder that I knew, basically, what do you need? What do you really need? And it turns out the answer was right in front of me. They were like, the data is a mess and the platform is really hard to work with. Hadoop is really hard to work with as a data scientist. So what I did is I went and bought a few courses on Udemy on Hadoop. I read a book on Apache Spark, and I read a book called The Data Warehousing Toolkit by Rolf Kimball to try and upskill myself on the data platform and bringing data together into what I now know as a data mart. I didn't know it back then, I had to learn that, but I was putting together a data mart to make it easier for analysts and data scientists to work with the data. Now, as I said, I didn't really have experience with Hadoop all that much, so really all I did in the beginning was write out documentation. I documented the different data sources, where it was coming from, any issues that I saw in the data. So all I did was write documentation, basically. But this got me access to the company's code repository, so I could see all the different pull requests that were being done and could see all of the different code bases. This led me to learn a lot more about development, about data engineering, and eventually I started contributing to these pull requests, just leaving comments here and there on different sections of code where I didn't understand something or something didn't look right to me. And eventually, I started contributing directly to the different projects of the company. With all of that, I managed to justify my value to the client, and they were happy to renew my contract. I actually got a really long-term contract with that particular client and stayed with them for about 3 years. Inadvertently, I'd become a data engineer with strong skills in Hadoop and Apache Spark. And as it just so turns out, tools like AWS Glue and Azure Synapse use Spark as their engine, so the skills generalized quite well. I also had conceptual skills where I understood what a data warehouse was and how to design one. The main point here is that no one course or learning roadmap could have told me exactly what I needed to study or learn to be able to add value. You see, I really enjoyed what I was doing. I loved doing the technical work with data, but there was no specific resource that could have told me the path that I was going to take. Given my story, I wanted to extract 3 key lessons that I think could help you on your professional journey. I work in the data industry, so it might just be applicable to the data industry, but I think you could generalize it to any professional career or professional goal, right? So the first big lesson that I learned and took away from this experience is that you need to balance what you enjoy with the needs of those that you serve, your clients or your employer. To be a professional at something, you actually need to help solve a problem for someone, especially if they're going to be paying you to solve that problem. I know that sounds obvious, but it's really easy to become your own client. By that, I mean it's really easy to focus on what you want to do rather than what everyone else needs from you. Now, I've often heard this as a compromise between what you want to do and what people are willing to pay you for, but compromise is really negative. I like to think of it more as a balance, right? A balance between what you enjoy doing and what someone else needs help with. And I mean, the entire reason for having a skill in the first place is probably to help someone, right? So I think of it more as a kind of balancing act between those two aspects. So to make it practical and to help you with this point, I want you to answer the following questions. Who is your ideal client or employer? This doesn't have to be someone specific. It can just be a persona that you think of. I mean, you could think of sub-questions like, what industry do they work in? Is it a big corporate that you'd like to work for, or a startup? Is it a big team you'd like to work in, or a smaller team that you'd like to work in? This helps guide who your ideal client or employer is, and really answers the question of who do you want to serve with the skills that you want to acquire. Then secondly, you need to answer the question of what do you think they struggle with the most? What aspects of their business or what they're doing do they struggle with? For example, in my story, the client was struggling with really messy data and a platform that data scientists couldn't really work with. So that gave me a clear answer as to what they struggled with. Then you need to answer the question of what is the intersection between what you enjoy doing and with what they struggle with, right? That intersection really answers what you could be doing to help that potential client or employer. For me, the intersection was that I really loved technical work. I enjoyed learning about different technologies, and the client was, once again, struggling with their data. So the intersection was, unknown to me at that point, but data engineering itself, right? They needed another data engineer. And then lastly, with the answers to those 3 questions, you can then start asking, well, what tools are they currently using or could they be using to solve those problems? I want you to pause the video for a couple minutes and just answer those questions for yourself. Just jot down a few ideas and come back to the video when you're done. Those answers can already help you clarify what you should be focusing on and what professional skills you should be acquiring. You see, this all relates to a point that I really enjoyed from a book by Dr. Cal Newport. It's called So Good They Can't Ignore You, where effectively Dr. Newport argues that follow your passion, or basically following only what you enjoy, is really bad career advice. Instead, you should focus on what is valuable to others, and slowly your passion will develop. The second bit of advice that I have is that the clearest step on your journey is the next one. It's really difficult to plan ahead in the long term. I mean, so much can change in the short term. So really what you should be focused on is simply the next step you're going to take. Set a goal for the next week or month to learn a new tool or complete a personal project or just watch a tutorial video. Then once you've achieved that step or that goal, you should reflect again on those same questions that I asked you before. At that point, your perspective will be slightly different. I mean, by definition, you'll be slightly older, but you'll also be wiser because you've gone through a bit of that learning journey and more well-informed to know what the step after that is. So this is an iterative process. You set a goal or a target, you get to that goal and evaluate how things are going. You can even add to that list of questions by asking yourself, what did you really enjoy about that journey or that part of the journey, and what didn't you enjoy? And are there ways to maximize what you enjoyed and minimize what you didn't enjoy? And again, keeping in mind that question of who is your ideal client? Who do you want to serve with this new skill set? And that'll guide you to the step after that. And this leads me to my last bit of advice. You need to focus on one thing at a time, but keep an open mind. We can only focus on one thing at a time, really. And for me, in my story, I used a whole bunch of different resources to learn new skills, but I was focused on one problem, right? So when I was looking at all those different resources, I had one problem in mind that I would always go back to and think about. So you need to keep your focus on one thing at a time. Another book, actually by Cal Newport again, called Deep Work, is really great at explaining this. I actually think I have it like right here. So this book over here, I even got the hardcover, right? This book really emphasizes the point that focusing on something is so important and really helpful to you to achieve your professional goals. I feel like this is turning into like an ad for Cal Newport or something. Now, while it's important to focus, it's equally important that that focus doesn't become narrowness. If you only have a few hours a week to learn or study, it's important that you spend at least a little bit of that time exploring different topics in the field of interest. For example, you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. But there's also YouTube channels out there if you're interested in data, like Alex the Analyst, Dashiell Parmar, Seattle Data Guy, right? Or you could look at different blogs if you prefer reading blogs. One of them that I really enjoy is called Start Data Engineering. I'll leave a link to that in the description. Or you could subscribe to different authors on Medium. The point is that you need to vary your kind of information diet, right, on the topic, just so that you're open to new ideas, and so that when you reflect on your next step in your learning journey, you're more well informed and can make a better decision as to what to learn next. So to review the 3 different pieces of advice that I discussed, firstly, you need to balance what you enjoy with what other people need. Secondly, the clearest step on your journey is going to be the next one that you take. And lastly, you need to focus, but keep an open mind. With these points in mind, you carve out your own learning journey, iteratively. And while you're learning, you're going to be adding value to others. I hope that my story and advice helps you on your own learning journey and helps you cut through some of that intimidation and overwhelm by having so many options at your fingertips. If you feel comfortable to, I'd love to hear what you think your next step is going to be. I mean, as a viewer of this video, you are the person that I want to serve with my videos. I could be able to help you on that learning journey. So if you're comfortable, please do share your thoughts. And if your next step happens to involve data science, data engineering, data analysis, then do consider subscribing to the channel. I hope that you enjoyed this video. All the best on your journey, and I'll see you soon.